internet or maybe as a podcast or watching the video somewhere. With a one-of-a-kind distinguished background, managing director of the Salazar Group, David Salazar brings what I believe to be a truly unique blend of expertise and experience to help his clients. What's he do? He helps business owners just like you fight and win the challenge of building a quality business and then selling it. David, welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show and Podcast.
Thank you, Rick. Good to see you again.
It's good to have you back on the show. He's one of our few returning guests. I enjoyed the interview that we did the last time so much. I want him to come back and maybe dig a little bit deeper into some of these areas. This is podcast episode number 1204. So why don't you explain in your own words, David, what does the Salazar Group do?
The Salazar Group is a company that helps business owners here in Orange County kind of realize their dreams of exiting and selling their businesses. And we focus on businesses that are $5 to $50 million in revenue, so kind of the lower middle market as it's described, but just locally, companies here in Orange County.
How did you get into this?
I have a unique background. I was a former president and CEO of a medical device company, worked for Procter & Gamble and Baxter Healthcare and a variety of companies. But I also worked for CB Richard Ellis as a broker, and I have about over 15 years experience as a broker. So it's a unique experience for me.
And what led you to believe that this was the right next chapter for you to be in this space, being in the M&A space?
There's a challenge that business owners have, and they really don't many times realize that there are experts buying your company. I mean, these guys do this all day long. They're very bright. They know how to do this. But sellers really, do it once in a lifetime. I mean, you take 20, 30 years to grow your business and finally get to that point where you want to sell it. And you really need someone on your side. You need an advocate for yourself to make sure it's successful.
So you're on the sell side?
Yeah, we're only on the sell side. So we don't work with buyers very much. It's really with sellers that, like I said, businesses kind of $5 to $50 million in revenue.
And that was a conscious decision by you as an entrepreneur to be on that side of the transaction?
Yes, it is. And there are a variety of brokers. Some represent buyers, but we focus on specialized representing sellers.
Can I ask you why you chose that side of the transaction? What is it about representing the sellers that got you going and got you excited?
Well, like I was mentioning, Rick, there's really two sides of the transaction, and you've got experts on one side, and you have people who are just doing this once or twice in their life on the other side. And so I have a real passion for helping those people and making sure that things go well, and we have a proven process that works, make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And so representing sellers on this very, very important transaction is really very enjoyable for me.
We're talking with David Salazar. He is the founder of the Salazar Group. We're talking about his business, and we're going to talk about selling a business and some of his deep expertise. So I'm wondering, you say there are professionals on the other side of the transaction. So in your experience, when a business owner who's worked so hard to create their business wants to sell it, it generally represents a reasonable portion of their net worth. Is that true, David?
Sometimes 100%.
100%.
But most people want to sell either because of retirement or they're burnt out or they want a liquidity event. They want to diversify their net worth and take some of that 100%, reduce that down to a lower amount and have cash in the bank, and they feel more comfortable with more of a diverse portfolio.
I like what you said earlier. I use the phrase, we don't do well what we don't do often. And to your explanation on the buy side, they're doing that frequently, if not continuously. On the sell side, it's once in a decade or 20 year or longer. And so they really don't have the experience to properly represent themselves, do they?
They really don't. And a lot of them have trusted advisors, such as attorneys and CPAs and other people to help them. But those people aren't in the market every day either. So you really need someone who's thinking about this 24/7 and really cares and wants to help you out.
So when you were on our show previously, I believe it was that time or in one of our conversations where I attribute this to you, where you said in some ways, in spite of all that, it is a bit of a seller's market now because of the positive economy and the performance that companies have had over the past few years?
Rick, it's kind of amazing to see how much money is poured into private equity.
Okay.
And you have these private equity groups now that are forming. Literally, there's a $1 trillion, as I understand it, sitting on the sidelines, waiting to be invested into private, smaller firms.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel the stock market is kind of at its peak, and they feel other real estate's at its peak, and so they want to invest in businesses and get a chance to grow that business and then resell it down the road for higher profit.
So in your experience, because you've probably seen a range of people call you or email you, text you, or friends say, hey, I know somebody who wants to. Is there a general sense that you have, David, about how long before a seller is ready to sell the business do they start thinking about selling the business? You know what I mean?
Unfortunately, it's usually a little late, Rick. We really want people to start thinking about selling their business really 2 or 3 years ahead of time. The more time, the better. And as a matter of fact, it's my philosophy is that you should be ready to sell your company at all times.
Okay.
You should know the value of your business at all times. And you're constantly working on improving it, not only working in the business, but working on the business. And so that when that buyer comes around, whether it be a specific choice or that a strategic company that happens to want to buy you, that you're prepared and you don't have to wait 3 more years to actually do the sale.
So you said something that I wanted to peel back a little bit. Be ready to sell and kind of know the price. Is it your experience from talking to these folks that many of the people that are listening to our radio show who may own a business that fits in your niche actually have an accurate understanding of what, if they were going to sell their business, it could sell for today? Is it your experience?
Yeah, they really don't. Unfortunately, when you spend 20 years doing something, you really think that your baby is absolutely beautiful, and when you find out that there are some flaws there, you're kind of surprised. And we call this, this gap, this valuation gap, is where you think it's worth versus what the market thinks it's worth, and that gap there is difficult to overcome sometimes. So
okay, so help me to understand, based on your experience in this space, when you have that initial conversation or subsequent conversation with a business owner where you go, well, Paul, I know you think your radio station is worth X, but based on these factors, it's kind of worth X minus 50%. How do they react to that?
Well, for a variety of reasons, they're understandably upset about it. They planned on walking away with $10 million, and you're only telling them it's $5 million. And so there's a gap in their retirement plan. There's a gap that needs to be filled somehow. And then they have to get used to the fact that buyers are only going to offer the 5, not the 10 million. And they take it personal sometimes, and you really can't. This is a business. These are transactions. These are professionals doing these transactions. So you have to realize that whatever the market value is what your business is worth.
So, that sounds like a best practice is to know the value of your business as early in the process, maybe always. If you don't know it now, you should learn it soon. What's a way that a business owner could get a qualified sense for what the business is worth without maybe having to engage the people who are used to valuing businesses to sell it? Maybe they just want to get an estimate or a model of what the business might sell for.
Yeah, what you can do is you can get a broker opinion of value, which is someone who's in the marketplace, who has comps, comparable to other sellers, sales that are going on, and just that broker opinion of value is not nearly expensive as a valuation would be. An evaluation, of course, you would use in court or divorce or something like that, and that costs tens of $20,000 or $30,000. But a broker opinion value is much less, and it just gives you a good feel as to not only what your business is worth right now, but how could you make it better? How could you improve it by the time you want to sell it?
How does it do that? How does it tell you how to improve it?
Well, they're basically value drivers, as we call them, that buyers are looking for. So buyers are looking for a certain type of concentration with your customers, a certain type of customers, making sure your financials are a certain way, that you have upside potential with a strategic plan in place. So these value drivers are what buyers are looking for. And when you have those, they get very excited. When you don't have them, then they have to start discounting your business because they know they have to do it at some point to get the true value of the business.
So if someone was interested in doing a valuation through a broker, is that something they could just Google and people would come up who provide that service? Or how would a business owner even begin that process of figuring out how to get an appraisal or a comp-based sale?
Well, at Salazar Group, we do that as part of our additional services that we provide. Not all brokers do that, but Salazar Group we do, and we just think it's essential to know where you currently are with your value, and then how we can improve it, and then we can sell it. So it's kind of a three-step process.
It kind of makes perfect sense to me. I mean, if you're gonna sell anything, the idea of selling your house is a great one, right? You sort of look around, what's been happening in my neighborhood, and what's the trend? What's the price per square feet they're getting? How many square feet do I have? And is that a number I'm good with? This is sort of a similar thought process, right?
Well, in the sense that you have a buyer and a seller, and you have comparables, but every business is a little bit unique.
That's
it's
the
a
challenge,
little bit
right?
different.
Yeah, you can't just lay the square footage on top of the
the
business.
customer base is a little different. Your strategy is a little different. Your pricing may be a little different, and so you just can't take a cookie cutter approach to it. You really have to take more of a strategic approach and say, okay, you have the good numbers, the cash flow, but what else do you have that might be intellectual property? It might be a certain strategy that you have. There's some reason that makes you a little special why your customers buy your product versus your competitor.
Okay, so there's a story there.
There is.
So in your opinion, having worked with these folks, is a business owner mentally prepared to talk about their business this way to a potential acquirer? You know what I mean? Are they thinking that way, or is it take a little bit of training and helping for them to kind of get their talk track right about selling the business, or at least how they would represent their business?
Yes, there are specific steps that you can take for this process of getting to the point where you're optimizing the value of your business. And those steps are steps that we have defined after talking to hundreds of buyers of all different sizes of businesses. And we've talked to those buyers and said, what are the 6 things that you're looking for in a business really to optimize it, for a seller to optimize their value? And so we have identified those. It takes a little time to work with the company to get those implemented. Sometimes it may be implementing a CRM system, and that takes a little time and a little investment, but at least you know what the buyers are looking for, and then they can just check off the list when they come to your business and see you have these systems in place. And
so we're talking with David Salazar. He's a friend. He's a member of the Critical Mass community. He's a repeat radio show guest, having been on before talking about his business. We're going a little bit deeper in the specific area to try to help many of the listeners in our audience who are business owners. I'm not expecting you all to rush to the door and sell your company. I'd like you to do what David said, have your company in a position to be sold at any time, because some percentage, I'm sure, David, of business owners who sell their business are forced to. It's not of their own volition, either health or personal situation, right? I mean,
yes, absolutely, Rick. Health is a big one. We get surprised sometimes as we get a little bit older on some of the health issues, and you have to be ready to sell in a short period of time. And if it gets extreme, your family is going to be in a position to sell it also. So you should be prepared at all times, in my feeling, and at least once a year. Determine what the value of your business is, right, and someone can come in and evaluate it and get a good, honest valuation.
So when you say health, I'm sure most in our listening audience, either live on OC Talk Radio or in the future on, I don't know, iTunes or whatever, think, like I get cancer or I have a stroke or something like heart disease. I would argue mental health in the form of burnout is a health-related issue that causes people to sell their business. Do you see that?
It's in the top 2.
It is?
So burnout and retirement are the top 2 reasons. And of course, burnout comes when it's unexpected. You come back from a vacation and you sit back down at your desk and you realize, I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh my God.
I've done this for 20 years. I've built this baby to what she is now, and I don't want to do this anymore. So what do I do now?
Right.
And again, those that are prepared are the ones that'll get a chance to optimize the value.
Just as you're talking, I feel like some of the oxygen has gone out of the room. You know what I mean? To have that sitting at your desk starting to feel that way, you sort of start to hyperventilate's too extreme of a term. But I mean, that sort of like is the wrong path to exiting your business, because you're already, in my mind, kind of in a negative situation, right? You're sort of in a deficit position. Then maybe you don't want to be that when you're selling your most prized asset.
Yeah, you're almost being forced out.
By yourself.
Because you don't want to come to work tomorrow.
Right.
Or you don't want to do this next year, or you don't want to wait for a recession to happen again and then have the value of your business go down and wait 10 years to build it back up. And so you do get kind of a little bit of a panic. So it's best to have people that such as our group, and that can help you be prepared. And so whenever you do have that feeling, whether it be for retirement or burnout, you're prepared.
So I'm talking with David Salazar. So let's role play for a second. Let's say I'm that starting to be burned out business owner, and I get you to give me a broker's evaluation, and I look at the number and I go, "Oh, David, I need more than that." And you go, "Well, here's 6 or 8 drivers of value. You ought to do this work." The time that I'm most likely wanting to do it is when I'm already starting to feel like I don't want to be there to begin with, right? Now you're telling me I have to work harder to get out? That seems to me to be a difficult ask.
Yeah, it's not really, you're a hard worker to begin with. Anybody who starts a business and builds it up to $5-10 million, you're a hard worker.
Right.
And I'm always amazed at the challenge those people overcome. But it really, again, just means being a little smarter, if you will.
Okay.
Understanding the process. We use a specific proven process that has steps to it that make sure that everything is covered. And then also being prepared, understanding the value drivers and the value builders, and those things that'll optimize the business. You already know those, you're working on those, instead of being surprised by them.
So we have a few minutes left here, and I wanted to get over. I've got a number of questions here, and we've only touched on a few of them, David. We'll have to have you back in the future. Come back and maybe get the rest of the questions I didn't get to.
Great.
Okay,
Sounds
we'll
good.
do that again, Paul.
Yeah.
Let's get them scheduled, Joan. But my question for you is there a psychology of the sale that experienced buyers know if they go through a certain sequence, they're likely to prevail in the negotiations? Let me be more obvious. Do sellers agree to a higher price in the beginning of acquisition, knowing that by the time they get to close, they're going to be able to lower that price?
Yeah, Rick, it's called retrading.
Retrading?
Yeah, so they'll make an offer, let's say $5 million, and you'll go through the entire negotiation process, and you'll sign a letter of intent. Then they get to something that's called due diligence, where they're really peeling back the skin of the business and looking into it. And every little thing they find, they're going to deduct $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever. And your $5 million all of a sudden goes down to $3.2 million.
Okay.
And
so what recourse do you have at that point as the seller of the business?
It's a little late, and
Okay.
you have to decide whether you want to move ahead with the lower price, or do you want to wait and improve the value of the business later on? So that's my point about being prepared, is if you know exactly what the buyers are looking for, and you're working constantly at improving the value of the business, then you won't have to make those mistakes.
So retrading, business owners, this is a word you should write down, and you should be ready for it, because it sounds like it's an effective negotiating strategy. Because I don't know if this is your direct experience, but have you heard stories where the seller sort of believes they have a deal? Maybe they start picking out the cabin that they're going to buy, or the boat that they're going to cruise on, or mentally they start to move towards the exit, which then would make this retrading all the more effective. When they come in and give you the lower offer, you're sort of bought into getting out of the business.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it sound like all buyers are bad people or something and unethical. It's just part of negotiations, and they a lot of times don't know all the details until we get to due diligence. Right. So the legitimate reasons why they reduce the price, and they have to reduce the amount of their risk. So it's part of the process, and you just have to be ready for it, prepared.
Right, and I would imagine the better that you implement the 6 values and drivers of value, the less retrading that might go on, because there's less risk that the buyer discovers through due diligence.
Absolutely. If you have advisors up front who can counter any objection that a buyer might bring with evidence that we've already researched, you're going to be in a much better position to not only hold your value, but maybe improve your value.
Oh my goodness! You can go the other way.
Yeah, you can.
You've actually seen it go the other way, David Salazar?
We actually have. When I find out that a buyer really needs this business to support one of their other businesses or an industry or something, we make sure we optimize that value. So.
Man, what a great thought to leave towards the end of the interview for those of you that are still listening. Hopefully it's all of you that started listening, are still listening. From your experience helping to structure these deals, what type of advisors does a business owner need to kind of manage the transaction?
Well, you need a transaction attorney.
Okay.
So you don't want the attorney to handle the divorce or something or the foundation of the business, but you want a transaction attorney who does this on a weekly basis and has experience there. You also want a CPA who is also involved in transactions. So this isn't about minimizing taxes. This is about optimizing the value of the business and the way the accounting records need to be to show the buyer that everything is in order.
Okay.
And then thirdly, I would say a financial planner. If you know what your gap is, if you know what you need to do to make sure you satisfy your retirement needs, then of course a financial planner can help you with that. So,
what about have you found that all bankers are equally comfortable in helping a business owner transact their business, or are you finding that some bankers maybe are better equipped at helping the business owner?
I think that banking is very important in financing, and what I do is I try to get the business pre-approved by certain banks so that when a buyer brings up an objection to financing, we can overcome that.
Okay.
And we've already addressed it.
So that's kind of the dream team then that a business owner should consider, with you kind of being the quarterbacking of it then, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And it is a dream team from the standpoint is we're helping the owner realize his dream after all these years. So.
Yes. So what a great thought to end on. Thank you for giving of your time.
You're welcome.
You're a friend of the show. You're a part of our community, a very valued member, and I'm glad that you agreed to come back and share more of a bit of what you know about this very important subject.
My pleasure, Rick.
And I'd like to thank none other than Paul Roberts, who owns the station and engineers the show, our three producers without whom we could not do the show each week. They are Joan Park, Crystal Nunley, and Haley Stern. And if you'd like to connect with me, let's start on LinkedIn. I'm Richard Franzi, spelled Franzi. And until our next show, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.